Now notice that you can use the regular movement code. So just like in the old days when you actually had objects move towards your player, you can actually use that same kind of code here. So for example, if I want this guy to move towards me, do you remember the step towards commands? Those things basically exist in code as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run one of those. It turns out that going around walls is something that requires motion planning because it's got to figure out what the path is. So MP is where the old drag and drop command is, which was going around walls. And it's called MP potential step. And you can check against particular objects, or you can check against all objects. I'm going to have him, let's see, maybe I'll try MP potential step object and have him avoid wall basics. So the X position is going to be the player dot X, comma, Y is going to be the player dot Y, comma, let's see, now I need to know his speed. 3, I don't know. That's probably too fast, actually. 2. And then the object. I am avoiding wall basic. Let's see how that works out. I'm sure that's right. I never make mistakes, right? Ah! Get away from me. Ah! Get away from me. Ah! Run! Run, you foolish player. Yeah, he's perhaps too fast. Or maybe I should make my player faster. Keep in mind, the number of pixels we're playing with is pretty small here. I mean, this is, what, 32 pixels? If he's moving at a speed of 1, he's going to cross that in 1 second. So he doesn't necessarily need to be terribly fast. That's a little better. Sprint! Sprint! There we go. Yeah, it kind of scares me too. All right, so next up. Shooting. So for shooting, the idea with this is we're actually going to create something called an overlay. We're basically going to switch from the 3-dimensional view back to a 2-dimensional view after everything in the 3-dimensional view is drawn, and then basically draw over the top of that. So that's called an orthogonal projection. So after we've drawn everything that we're going to do for the 3-dimensional room, so all the objects, all the walls, that kind of stuff, the last thing we want to do is we want to draw anything that goes over the top. So in this case, I'm going to use this sprite shotgun sprite. I don't condone violence, blah, blah, blah. And the other thing is, if I'm going to draw a health bar, that also would need to go here. Now, we need to make sure this draws last. So we're actually going to set this gun sprite to draw at depth -100. So the player draws first at depth 100. So he sets up the camera so that the 3-dimensional view is drawn correctly. All the rest of our stuff is drawn at depth 0. And then at depth -100 is when the gun itself is going to draw. So it's going to switch to, from 3D to 2D, draw that, and then we're done. All right, so I should load in that sprite. So that's actually in the resources in the README. Let's see, GameMaker 1, no. GameMaker 2, there we go. First person shooter, resources. Here's the animated sprite. So notice it's the full animation. So the idea is that we're going to stay on this first sub-image here, and then when we fire, we actually let it animate. So I'm going to create an object, and I'm going to give it that sprite. Let's see. Maybe I want to actually place this differently. Problem is right now, if I place this gun object, he goes there. And that whole section of the room gets blocked off, which we don't really want. He's kind of a controller in some ways. So what I think I'm going to do is make sure that this guy gets created off the screen. So rather than placing him in the room, when the player is first created, what he's going to do is he's going to create the gun. And he's going to create it at room width, room height, gun object. So basically, it's going to just create it off just to the right of the room. So hopefully, I'll never run into it, unless you manage to accidentally get outside the walls, which is your own problem. So these are built-in variables which contain the width and height of your room. By default, 640 by 480. But it'll give you back whatever it is if you change it. So that's kind of nice. All right, so once I've created this, I have this gun object, and it sits there. So I should do more than that. In particular, what I'd like to do is have it draw that in orthogonal mode. So that's this stuff here. So let me go to the draw event of the gun. All right, so what are these things doing? Well, suddenly I realized I should rename my sprite something other than sprite 9. Let me do that because I'm OCD like that. This is the gun sprite. I feel better now. OK, we can continue. And this is going to be the gun sprite. So first thing in here, the D3D set projection orthographic changes it back to two-dimensional view. We're going to get the x and y position and where we want the orthogonal view to start, which is the upper left of the room. And then we do 640 by 480, which is the lower right of your room. If you really want to, what you can do is you could also do room width here and room height, so that if your room ever changes, it'll automatically change it to that. You can actually change the angle of this projection. That's kind of weird. Maybe we'll play with that later on. We're going to set hidden back to false, so we draw over the top of things. And then we're basically drawing the gun sprite over the. This is actually the normal way you would draw sprites in GameMaker. So like you would draw the regular two-dimensional sprites, because we're drawing a two-dimensional over the top. So things we're doing here, we're saying which sprite it is. It's the gun sprite. Subimage. -1 is a special value, which is whatever the current animated frame is. I could equally say image index there. Where I want it to draw, this is the x and y position. How much to scale it? So we're actually doubling the size of it. Well, that's interesting. This is how much to rotate it. So we're rotating it 0 degrees, which means we're not rotating it. Drawing it in white, and it's totally opaque. Alpha is usually how transparent something is. So 0.5 would be partially transparent. 1 is you can't see through it at all. We set hidden back to true. And then the next time that we draw things, keep in mind that the player is the first thing to draw. So if we go back to the player, his draw event, the very first thing he does is he sets it back to 3D. So we'll be able to draw the next frame in 3 dimensions. He sets the camera, draws the floor and ceiling, all the walls draw. The gun changes it back to 2 dimensions and draws itself. Whee! OK, so we should do something about that animation. But there it is. It's drawing on the screen. In particular, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the image speed to 0 when we first start, so it's not animated. Much better. OK, I feel better about that.